What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Player One versus the World for a very, very special interview. Obviously, we love talking about Life is Strange in here, and for that reason as well, we have a very heavily inspired Life is Strange game here, developed by the wonderful people at Lowbirth Games. I have the absolute pleasure of welcoming on Olivier Lussier, who is the co-founder and creative director at Lowbirth Games. I was going to give his other roles for the game that he's worked on, but he's got so many, and we'll come on to that, obviously. But Olivier, thank you for joining me. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm very good, and you?
Yeah, very good, and obviously very good having played your game as well. I have played it. I really enjoyed it. We talked about it in StrangeCast, so I can't wait to come on here to talk about it because we have a very, very much a Life is Strange audience, and people who obviously have played Life is Strange should definitely go and check this game out. So we can dig into that. But before that as well, for anyone new here, please do consider dropping a subscribe on the channel, turn on notifications, share the video, and like the video as well. It helps support the channel more than anything else. And as I said, on the channel, we've got a lot of Life is Strange content, including podcasts. So go and check those out whilst you have the chance. But not before we've spoken to Olivia, because that's the main point here. So Olivia, start off with congratulations on the game's launch, This Bed We Made.
Thank you.
For Lowbirth. Obviously, really great to see it on both consoles and PC. I kind of want to start there, which is like, what was your immediate feelings from both yourself and the team getting this game out, and then also the initial reception that came about from the game? Because obviously the Steam reviews have been glowing. I've seen them myself, so I just wanted to know what's it been like to see that.
Well, the first reaction is kind of relief, I guess, because I think, I've heard people in the industry say that every game released is a small miracle, but I think
Mm.
it's even more true when it's an indie game, and
Mm.
even more so when it's a first game from a studio. The development of this bed took 4 years and a half,
Ooh.
and there were definitely times when it seemed like we would never see the end of it. The game would never ship. So just the fact that it released was a big relief and a big accomplishment, and like a big weight lifted off our shoulders for sure. And then so just the fact that we released was a big thing, and then seeing the very positive reviews on top of that was very incredible. It went, it goes beyond our expectations. So I don't think we've really. It's starting to sink in, but it's hard to, after like almost 5 years of the game being in its little bubble and people not see, like, we didn't have that much feedback for a long time. Like, we went to events like Gamescom and all that, so that was great to get some feedback, but that much people playing the game at the same time is pretty crazy. So I'm still wrapping my head around that.
Well, I'm absolutely thrilled for you because obviously I've been in the industry for many years. I used to cover games when the indie scene burst onto the scene, and it's very hard sometimes to kind of define what indie is to some people because sometimes there's a publisher involved, and I'm like, that's not independent, like compared to some of the other independent developers who make games for many years. And obviously, this has been self-published by Lowbirth. It's been developed by Lowbirth. So congratulations on it. It's a big
Thank
achievement
you.
to get, and especially with the team that you have. And we're speaking about Lowbirth as well. You're based in Canada, and this is a Canadian studio. I kind of wanted to talk about Lowbirth because I wanted to know what the origin of the studio was, and then also how it came to be, and then even the inspiration for the name as well. Why is it called Lowbirth Games?
Yes. So at the start, Lowbirth was a family studio. I co-founded the studio with two of my cousins, and so I have a background in cinema. I studied cinema. One of my cousins studied video games, and the other one studied archaeology. So we all come from different backgrounds. And about 5 years ago, we were all in a place where like, I wasn't sure if I wanted to stay in cinema. My cousin in archaeology wasn't sure if she wanted to like dig in the mud for the rest of her life. So we were like kind of at a crossroads. And my cousin, and it's my other cousin's sister. She studied video games, and she was about to finish her studies, and she didn't really see a place for her in the industry.
Mhm.
Uh, like in Montreal, Ubisoft is very big, and she couldn't really see herself working for Ubisoft or companies like that. So she was like, well, why not create my own company and like, be the change that I want to see in the industry, especially, creating safe spaces for women, for LGBTQ people. Um, so we started the project, just the three of us, and it was really kind of at the time it felt more like a passion project. We didn't really think it would become like what it is now.
Mhm.
But we were fortunate enough that people along the way were interested in the project, wanted like believed in the project, and wanted to in this bit we made and wanted it to grow. So yeah, we started just the three of us, and now we're a company of about 15 people. And as for the name, it's not really a real word, but it kind of comes from Middle Ages and the idea of like being of low birth or high birth. And it was also kind of the idea of like there are a lot of companies that video game companies that have these names like supermassive, awesome, mega games, you know, that like that set the bar high. And we like to set the bar low so that you know people have low expectations and then we can only surprise them. So there was a bit of that as well in the name.
Oh, that's very interesting, and I feel like you exceeded all expectations with this bed we made. As I said, it looks fantastic for an indie game when you play it. It just doesn't for like what I've seen previously of indie games, and no kind of like discredit with them. We saw stuff like Limbo and Papers, Please, like, and just to see this game when I loaded up for the first time, I was pleasantly surprised. And then also even I just want to say to you as well, I really like the touch that you had in the main menu screen where you had like a little message from the development team saying this game means the world to us. It just felt quite connecting with the developers. I thought I've never seen anything before like that, so it's quite nice to see that. Um, and you mentioned it yourself there as well. You have a background in cinema. I kind of wanted to just pick you apart on that a little bit more because obviously, like, what kind of films inspire you? Because this bed we made has got Life is Strange influence. It's got these games influence, but obviously your background's film. I feel like it has a film influence as well. What kind of like your go-to films and the kind of like genre that you really like the most?
Yes. Well, a big influence for this bit we made was the movies were the movies of Alfred Hitchcock. Yeah, that's a big influence for me. And just yeah, I really like mystery movies in general, like even recent movies like Knives Out. I'm a big fan of. So yeah, a lot of inspiration from cinema, but yeah, also like Life is Strange for sure was a big influence as well. Even Elle Noire was one of the first like uh, because I growing up I wasn't a big gamer. I was playing mostly
Mhm.
like Mario Kart and stuff like that. And Eleanor was one of the first like more realistic games that I played. So it was a big inspiration as well. But yeah, like you can find some touches of like Alfred Hitchcock in the direction of the cutscenes, especially like every like I put a few nods to some of his famous shots and stuff into the cutscenes.
Yeah, it's a good pick for Alfred Hitchcock. Obviously, that game is set in its period piece of this bed we made, and it feels very much like something you could take from a Hitchcock film, which I will give you full credit for that. And it feels like something that people will notice as well now that you've mentioned it. And I'm kind of seeing it myself a little bit through like just thinking about it. But like as you said it before, like we know this is a through and through indie game. But I just wanted to ask you, did you ever consider like looking for a third party publisher, or were there any ever talks to get this game made by a third party publisher, or even looking at potentially like Kickstarter as a platform? Because I only picked up this game probably like earlier in the year, and that was through a Facebook advert. Actually, that's what kind of like flagged it to me, and then eventually I started seeing little things pop up here and there. I saw Luc Baghadoust share it on his Instagram. We'll come on to him in a little bit as well. So I was like, he's obviously got some kind of attachment to Lowbirth. But I was kind of curious, like, did you ever have like any talks with any publishers with this game at any point?
Yes, we've had quite a few. I think our CEO, my cousin Chloe, talked to most of them. The thing is, like it's all of us. It's our like the at least the co-founders. Not only as a company, it's our first game, but also as individuals, it was also our first game because we were either coming from other industries or straight out of university. So I think there was a lot of like uncertainty on the part of the publishers of like, well, can they deliver? And I think it's valid because it's a pretty ambitious game, as you were saying earlier. Like there aren't many indie games that are like 3D realistic. So I think I can understand from their perspective, like the uncertainty of like can they actually deliver it, and also like that's. But I think we're actually happy that we didn't have a publisher. Like for our next game, we'd like to have a publisher because hopefully it can help us having a bigger reach and all that. But we like at Lowbirth, we like going through everything. We like doing it, you know. So for instance, like all the marketing for this bed we made, like it's something that we wouldn't necessarily have been as involved in if we had a publisher. So we're really happy to have had the chance to do it, and also like not having a publisher kind of allows us, for instance, what you were talking about in the menu, the little message, like doing a game in the art style that we're doing and with the production value that we're doing, like with the voice acting and all that. Um, it's kind of tricky because it can lead people to think that we are a bigger company and have a bigger team that we actually have. So it was really important for us to stay in control of the messaging around the game and like really pushing and reminding people that yes, this is an indie game, because like if you look from afar and you squint a little, it can look like a double A game maybe, like in some ways, but it's really not. Like we're a very small team with a very very small budget, so I think that help of at least of like, well, we don't have a publisher, but we can really stay in control of the messaging around the game.
No, I find it all fascinating you said that, because obviously, like, I joked at the beginning where I could have given all the credit rolls that you have for this game. And then even when I was trying to work out how big Lowbirth was, I was thinking maybe it's like about 30 developers. And you said it's about, anywhere from 10 to 20. And then even the development scale, you said where it's about 4 years it's taken to make the game, kind of says like how much effort and time it's taken. And I kind of want to go into that a bit more, because obviously that's where like I find it very fascinating for a developer, because I've spoken to developers who have assigned roles and they go and work on things. But yourself, for example, and just to read out to people, and these are just some of the roles you worked on, which is you were creative director, cinematics director, lead narrative designer, and the voiceover director, among many other credit parts I saw you in there. I just wanted to know how you kind of like distribute that across an indie studio and how you work on it and try and make the game a seamless experience, because I imagine that you're one moment a creative director kind of overseeing things, then next minute you're in a VO booth for all the actors. Like, how did you manage all these tasks among all the developers that you had there?
I mean, it's not easy. I can tell you that I struggled, and I have to learn for the next project to like maybe give some of my hats to other people. But I mean, some of my roles go very well together. I think like for me, I approach this a bit differently maybe than if I had studied video games before, because for me, like especially at the beginning, now I'm starting to understand the industry a bit better. But coming into the project at first, I was coming very much from the perspective of a movie director, because that's what I studied in university. That's what I did. I directed a few short films. So for me, like directing the actors and directing the cutscenes kind of goes hand in hand with being a creative director, even though in most studios they're the different peoples do these different roles. But it is tricky because like being a creative director, even like I was also a co-producer on the game, requires you to be with the team every day, and doing a lot of meetings and making sure that everyone is on the same page and going in the same direction. But then when so the voice recording, for instance, took over a year to do the voice recording for the whole game. Like we have over 3,000 lines of dialogue in the game, so it was quite a long process to record all of that. And when I'm a recording session, like sometimes I'm in the studio for a day, my phone is off, so like it's tricky to do that, but while also having a team that I need to stay in contact with. And so yeah, it's not easy, and I definitely struggle at times, but at the same time it's difficult for me to pick only one of those jobs, because I love all of them. But as we go as well, like the thing that was tricky with this bed is that we started as just the three co-founders. The first year of development, we were only the three of us, so we kind of learned to like figure out each one of us like what can we do, and then we divided those tasks between the three of us.
Mm-hmm.
So when we got more money for the game or a bigger budget, we brought people in, but we still kept that mentality of like that mindset of like trying to do as much as possible ourselves. But now, as it went along, and even now with the new project that we're working on, like we're definitely trying to like find the right people for every role, and like because yeah, a lot of the development for this bed we made, like the three co-founders, we like for many months at a time we would not sleep very much. So we like it works for a first project, but it's not something that's very sustainable like in the long run. So we want to try to do less of that on the next project. But it's difficult because like we're very passionate people and we're very passionate about our company and about our game. So yeah, it's not easy, but we're trying to get better at balancing everything, I guess.
It's very commendable, and as you said, some of these roles and things and your background, it's a completely different world, and hopefully things go much more smoother as well. Obviously, going to the next games and with a bigger studio and bigger team as well that you have there. And obviously, one of the big elephants in the room is Life is Strange. I kind of got attracted to this title because I saw the massive influence from Life is Strange, and obviously it massively impacts my channel as well. But I kind of wanted to talk to you about that because I wanted to know, was it many of the developers who were really influenced by Life is Strange, or was it one in particular who really was fond of the series? And then also, from Life is Strange in general, what are the kind of key things you took away that you really wanted to incorporate into this bed we made? Because as you said, LA Noir, or, I could draw all kinds of games and Hitchcock influence, all of it's there. But like, what are the kind of key ones that you took away from Life is Strange that really affected this bed we made?
Yes. So I think what's interesting to explain is that when we started the project, because we were only the three co-founders, and
Hmm.
we didn't think we would ever get a team on the project,
Hmm.
so we wanted to make a game that we could make only the three of us together.
Hmm.
So we looked at walking simulators first, and we were at first mostly inspired by games like Gone Home. So really just like a main character that walks around a space and no NPCs and no
Hmm.
like interactions with other people. So that's how it started with the idea of like, well, let's have the main protagonist who's a maid and she's snooping around these hotel rooms, but they are empty because the guests are away. So that kind of the core of the game is very much more inspired by walking simulators and Gone Home. But then we pitched the project, and investors and people around us were interested. So when we realized that, oh, now we have the means to add more floors to the hotel and to add NPCs and all that, then we turned to Life is Strange. Yeah, I think that was the big part that we were inspired by the interactions with the NPCs. So, for instance, like the first Life is Strange, with Chloe and all those characters, and also like the romance aspect and all that. That was the main aspect, and like really yeah, like weaving it's kind of tricky. We were really trying to weave two different types of games, although I
Hmm.
think Life is Strange was also inspired by Gone Home a little bit. But so it's really like the game, this bed alternates between these sections that are very much more similar to Life is Strange, so lots of cutscenes, dialogue, choices, and then you have these sections that are more focused on exploration and looking at objects and all that. So we try to do a mix of the two, but yeah, that's really and like as a someone with a background in cinema, that's what really interested me in Life is Strange and other similar games. Is the really cinematic focus that these games have.
No, I find that all quite interesting because it was something I was trying to pick apart with this bit we made when we played it. I was like, I saw shades of Life is Strange influence, I saw shades of a different influence, and it kept changing. Because obviously, I'm not expecting to rewind time or anything in the game, but more so like there was like a lot of influences, and I could see the vibes that where it's like with certain characters how you interacted and the conversations, especially over like the phone with some of the characters. And just for FYI, anyone listening as well, we're not going to try and spoil anything because we want you to go and play it. We've kind of like maybe another time Olivia will come back and we can really dig deep into some of the things that we see in the game. So I'm trying to be as spoiler free as possible. Um, but just speaking of Life is Strange as well, because we just talked about that, I kind of wanted to know your experience with the series and just the title and the first title as well. Because like, when did you first cross paths with that series, and then what kind of like drew you close towards it? Because from my own experience, I followed Life is Strange from about 2014, so I started covering about 6 months prior to its release, and then the rest is history. I'm here currently running a YouTube channel heavily around Life is Strange, but I wanted to know what was it about the title because I know some people were there from the very beginning, and I know some people were drawn in from like certain people talking about it. I imagine you felt that with yourself with your own game where you wanted people to talk about it, kind of get more people to play it. So I just wanted to know your experience with the series up to this point.
Yeah, so as I was saying earlier, I wasn't really a gamer growing up, and
Mhm.
then when I went to university, I was really focused on movies. Like I tried to watch like 30 movies a month, so I was really, I didn't have much time for anything else. But when we started talking about Lowbirth with my two cousins, I bought a PS4 and I discovered I discovered Life is Strange. I discovered The Last of Us. I discovered many different games that I was like, oh man, how haven't I played this before now? But yeah, I don't know. I think like I really like the mystery genre, so I think the mystery aspect, especially in the first Life is Strange, really drew me in, and just like yeah, the characters and everything, how like attached you get to the characters, and I don't know, it feels very special, and I think that's something that we wanted, like forget about the specific mechanics and all that. I think that's something that we wanted to recreate a little bit. This having this little universe where you can like, obviously, this Bedu made is a very short game, but like we want to make
Mhm.
more games potentially in that same universe. So having a universe with characters that you can really grow uh, to attach to, and like it's so fascinating as well. Like looking at the community around Life is Strange, and like how passionate the fans are, and after all these years like still doing like fan art and all that
Mhm.
about like Chloe and Max, and yeah, I don't know, it feels very special. I think even in some ways, like I think even Don't Nod struggled to recreate the magic of their first Life is Strange, even though like I really love Life is Strange too, but I don't know, like I think the first game has something special about it.
Oh no, I completely agree with all of it as well because I love Life is Strange too, but very different from the first Life is Strange. Very divided for like a lot of the fan base, and then in itself, that first game is very special. And before I kind of move on to my next question, as you said, the community is still strong, and a lot of things are talked about in that community. And this is a spoiler for not this bed we made, but Life is Strange. I need to know: are you someone who saved Arcadia Bay, or do you save Chloe Price? This is the make or break with our interview here because I could turn off the interview right now.
Oh God, I have to go with Saving Arcadia.
Oh, cut me deep there. Cut me deep there. Yeah, but I completely understand. I know some people
Yeah.
are all about saving the town, but okay.
I can't sacrifice a whole town for one person, sadly, but it's
Yeah,
difficult.
yeah, it's a very difficult question, and a very it's always divided people. But I completely understand. I'm all about saving Chloe Price myself, but respect your position on that. And obviously, speaking of Life is Strange, I really enjoyed one of the Easter eggs that we had in the game as well, which is Frank's beans we found in the hotel. Obviously, Luc Baghadoust had shared that as well. I just wanted to know, with that Easter egg as well, did you have any other Easter eggs in mind, or anything else Life is Strange esque that you'd plan for an Easter egg that you might not have incorporated in the game, or and also why did you decide to do Frank's beans as the selection? Because obviously there's so many references you can make in the game.
Yeah, are there? I think there's some like references with the last names in the hotel logbook.
Mm.
I saw some people spotting them. I think on Twitter, like there's the last name Price in the logbook. But yeah, the beans. I just think because I think one of the reasons as well why Life is Strange is special to me is that I played the game alone, but then I replayed it with a second time with my cousins, and that's also something that I think we tried to recreate a little bit with this that we made is the fun of playing a game with other people. That's something that we saw, for instance, at when we showcased the game at Gamescom. We put the game on a TV screen, and instead of having a chair, we put like a sofa, a couch, and people would come like in groups of two and or three and play the game together, and like there's really something fun about playing those kinds of games with other people. And I don't know, when we played Life is Strange with my cousins, and like the whole scene with Frank in the diner, and like throwing the beans, and him saying I was eating those beans, and then you go in his van and you can find all the cans of beans. And I don't know, we just found it so funny that we really wanted to reference that in the game.
No, that's all quite interesting, and I like the approach that you made at Gamescom as well. You had like the sofa and people could play together because I did kind of feel that myself when I was playing. I was like, I understand why people have Twitch streamed it, and it seems to be quite popular with people who've
Yeah.
like helped promote the game. Where it's like it's nice that a community have done that because I felt that was some of the decisions I had and choices I made. And obviously, it seems like it'd be great if you had two people working there. Puzzles are very difficult. We won't come on the puzzles because I swear I got stuck for ages on some of them. But obviously, we talked about Life is Strange, and I kind of want to tackle this bed we made specifically and trying to avoid as many spoilers as possible, just a casual conversation about it. I just wanted to know what was kind of like the inspiration behind the story, because obviously it's set in Canada. There'll be roots with the title, but was the idea always for the game to be set in Canada, and then how the story concept came to be? Because it has this very like noir thriller, the 1960s 50s kind of vibe with it. It has a very great aesthetic with it. I just wanted to know how did the game come to be with just like the inspiration for the story as well.
Yeah, well, the first element, well, I think we never really questioned the setting. Like for us being in Canada, it felt natural to set the game in Canada because that's what we know, and also like so many games are set in the United States that we're like, oh, let's change it up a little. But the starting point for us was really the hotel and the maid. So that's where it all started, because we were trying to, as I said earlier, to do a walking sim at first,
Mhm.
but we wanted to change it up a little. So like for instance, Gone Home is in a house, so we were like, oh, what's similar but a bit different? So that's where the hotel came from. And then the 1950s, it's hard to go into it without going into spoilers too much, but I
Mhm.
was watching a Canadian documentary about the lives of lesbians in the well throughout Canadian history. Well, not throughout Canadian history, but let's say the 20th century, and there was a big portion of the documentary that was focused on lesbian pulp fiction. So like these kind of cheap novels that were kind of a bit exploitative. But anyway, so that was something that I found really interesting because I didn't know that they were a thing. Um, but yeah, so like in my head, there was like no representation for queer people in the 50s. But then I discovered no, there was. It's just that like these novels would always end with the characters like dying or like being miserable. So I found that very interesting, and so that was kind of the starting point of why we chose to set it in the 50s, and then also like since it was set in Canada, especially in Quebec, like the 1950s is a very uh, particular period in Quebec history. We call it the Great Darkness. It's like known for being a very conservative time, very like we're still very much dominated by the church, the influence of the church and all that. So it all came together, and we just found it interesting to explore that time period, but explore people who are absent from history books, because like growing up in Quebec, I had many classes on Quebec history, but they would never talk about like queer people in the 1950s, or like, oh, let's talk about like people who we know existed back then, of course, but were invisible. And so yeah, it kind of all it's not like something that you really like, I don't know, it all comes together naturally, I guess, is one way to say it, and in the end it all fits. But at first, like we didn't really know what we were doing exactly, but like themes came naturally, and like, oh, like again, it's hard to talk about it without spoiling it, but even like some elements regarding the ending with a certain detective, and like yeah, it all made sense eventually.
No, I completely understand that, and as I said, like I'll try and avoid spoil as well because I kind of got the vibe the more I progressed in the game and the kind of tone of setting, and then the way the attitudes were being perceived. Oh, I was like, that's a little bit of an interesting way of tone for it, and it kind of gave me, as you said, it gave me a very interesting insight into Canada for that point as well, because as you said, most games are set into America, so that is all quite interesting. Do you think it because I know that your studio has a big background with people from diverse backgrounds, from LGBTQ plus backgrounds. Do you think that kind of made the game feel a bit more effective in the way you kind of develop it, and then also kind of like portray these messages that you have such a diverse studio? Because it must mean a lot then to a lot of the people that you work with as well to kind of like make these games, and then also like kind of like put a spotlight on history or forgotten parts of history.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, for sure, it means a lot to me personally, but I know that our mission, if you will, because you know our mission as a company is to have like diversity both in the games that we make and also in our studio itself. And I know it's very important for a lot of our employees. And yeah, I think you can playing the game, you can feel that it comes from a place of like that it's authentic, you know, and that it comes
Hmm.
from a real desire to talk about these issues, because I think something that's been, you know, that people complain about lately sometimes is how some big studios, mostly maybe in cinema, but even sometimes in video games, kind of use these issues to kind of get like brownie points. I don't know, like you know,
Yeah.
like they just want to. It's more like an empty gesture or something. But for
Hmm.
us, it's really part of like, even like when before I came to the video game industry, for instance, like I was making movies. Like my last short film was about homophobia in sports and stuff like that. So it's something that's really important to us, to me as a director, as a writer, and to many of our team members. So I think you can feel it in the game.
No, I completely agree with you, and I get the brownie point because I feel like sometimes I'm like, there might be like a gay character in a game, like, and their purpose is beyond just being there. It's like, do you not like? And I never felt that with this bed we made. It felt gradual to the messages that you were getting to, so it was portrayed well. And obviously, this bed we made, little minor spoiler, but it's more about just kind of like highlighting this. There's the great concept which I found, which was your acolyte in the game. So for anyone listening, you have someone who will support you throughout the game. Not to give you any more spoilers, but there are two people that you can choose from. One's called Beth, one's called Andrew. Beth is a blessing in disguise. You'll meet her and find her very fascinating. But I just wanted to know the kind of concept with the acolyte, because it was a big part of the game. How did that come about, and was that planned from the very beginning, or did it something that came about the more you kind of progressed in development?
Yeah, so because we started the game as a walking simulator, the only character we had at first was Sophie, and even then she
Mhm.
didn't really talk that much because she was alone on the fifth floor doing her duties. So it's really when we started turning to Life is Strange, and even in some ways like games like, I guess, Mass Effect, you know, where you have companions and
Mhm.
stuff. Like we were like, oh, would it be fun to have kind of a dynamic like Sherlock Holmes and Watson, you know? So Sophie, the main character, being Sherlock, but having that kind of Watson character with with whom you can like bounce ideas and discuss like hypotheses and stuff like that. So they entered the project like a year into it, so the main story was already written, so everything that had to do with like the guests was already written. So it was kind of difficult, but like I had to do a bit of gymnastics with the other writers to make their inclusion seem like as seamless as possible, because like they weren't there from the start, so we kind of had to um, add them on top of what was already there. So we tried to find ways to make them as relevant to the mystery as possible, with how they can help, like finding people in the logbook, because the two, both Andrew and Beth, work at the reception desk. So they have access to the mail that clients receive, they have access to the logbook, and also each one of them has like their own expertise. Beth is a bit more street smart, whereas Andrew is more book smart. So yeah, we tried to incorporate that as best as we could, but yeah, like we probably would have done things a bit differently if we knew from the start that we would have these characters. Like, for instance, the character that you don't choose sadly kind of disappears for the rest of the game, just because of like production constraints and stuff like that. But so that's something maybe we would have done a bit differently if we had planned all of that from the start. But I'm so glad we added those characters, because I know they add a lot to the game. Especially I think Beth. I know people are very much in love with Beth. So
Yeah, I think Beth is like as a dream for a lot of people out there. But I find it fascinating that you gave me that, because I was thinking like one of the characters does disappear for a while, and I'm like, maybe that was because it's something that came out further down the line in terms of something you developed later. And it's fascinating that you did develop it later and then incorporate it the way you did, because at the same time you could only say that the flaw would be the other character disappears, and that would just be something like well, you can put them on the sideline because they're not your main choice. But it's fascinating that you had that development of it and brought it in really well, and great mechanic as well for it. And I felt very much myself with Beth and Sophie, where it's like very much like Max and Chloe vibes, just to give you a compliment. That's how I personally felt. And before I move on from the acolytes, I just wanted to ask you, Andrew and Beth, who did you pick? Who's your go-to?
It's difficult, because like I think Beth is the most entertaining. But I think, well, honestly, the real answer is you play twice and you try the game with both acolytes, I guess, because the way the way we did it, and I really wanted the each acolyte to bring something a bit different to the game. So it's the same story that you go through, whoever you pick, but each one of them brings a little something different to the investigation, and like with their own backstories. They both have their own like link a little bit to the investigation. And I find Andrew's backstory actually very very interesting and very touching. So yeah, I like them both for different reasons. But yeah, it's like asking me to pick, like to choose between my children, you know.
Yeah, it's very cruel, and I completely understand, because I'm currently on my second playthrough with Andrew. He hasn't slipped this time, just to let you know. He didn't slip on the second time. He did on the first time, but he hasn't slipped on the second time. But I just found that vibe with the characters, and I know that Luke said that he chose Beth, which is very much a testament to Beth. Very great character to be written. And just kind of curiosity, because like we've kind of scraped along a lot of these things. I'm just curious because I was more interested by the fact that when you play the game, you interact with certain characters. Obviously, Beth, Andrew, there's more characters. Then there's other characters that are mentioned in writing or like text, and you learn more about them in the game, but then you don't necessarily meet them in person. And it's same with the guests as well. Like you're walking around this hotel and there's not many guests. And in the concept, in this grand scheme of things, you are a maid, so you're basically cleaning rooms out, investigating, etc. But I was just curious, how come the decision was made that certain characters didn't appear on screen, and then also maybe like the hotel didn't have other guests like coming in and going? I'm just kind of curious about that. Was there limitations, or was that always planned where you just wanted to be more focused on Sophie and the certain characters you interacted with?
So there are two elements to that. First of all, it's a big production constraint. each character like took months to create. It's just like we're investigating like new pipelines for the next game, and I think they'll be a lot quicker. But with our pipeline for this game, characters were so expensive to create
Mm.
that like when we got like some investments and we were able to open up the scope of the project a little bit. I asked the art department like how many characters can we afford, and they were like, yeah, 5. So I was like, okay, I'll try to make it work with 5. But so maybe if the constraints had been a bit different, maybe you would have seen more people from the staff. But I don't think there's any version of the game where you would meet the guests ever, because that was from the very first moment our intention with the game of, well, as Sophie, you are this kind of invisible presence in the rooms, and we really wanted you as a player to connect with the guests without ever meeting them. It's kind of like we go into it in one of the later phone calls in the game with your acolyte, but there's this idea of like almost like players have sometimes parasocial relationships with characters, and we wanted Sophie to have the same thing with the guests of like she gets attached to them, she starts calling them by their first name, and like but she never meets them, and that was really important for us to. And like it was a gamble in some way, like especially since the game is pretty short, and also because of some of the choices that we offer to the player related to these characters. I was kind of worried that like would people actually like get attached to these characters. But from what I've seen, they do, which is great, because yeah, you don't meet them, and you only like discover them through the objects that they have in their rooms, or their letters or correspondence. So I find that very interesting that people can get so involved in their stories and want to maybe help them and all that. So that's very interesting to me.
Yeah, I found it quite fascinating because just my own experience. Like, I just wanted to like, I find it fascinating talking to you to kind of like understand like why certain things weren't done the way they were. Because I always thought like there was going to be a moment where someone would be standing in the doorway whilst I'm cleaning the room, and it freaked me out. Like there was just like
Yeah.
moments of that, and maybe I was just spooking myself out because of the atmosphere you created from it. So it kind of says a testament to the game that you made. So all fascinating in itself. And I don't know if you want to answer this, but I'm just going to take a gamble here, obviously, because I love the Acolytes concept. I thought it was great, but this is an indie game, and it's proud to be an indie game, and you had like constraints and budgeting and time and stuff. I just wanted to know, were there any kind of concepts that were that were left on the cutting floor that you kind of like wish that you would have incorporated, or that just didn't work? That something would have like and you mentioned it just before as well, like some of the things that you could have like hoped for with more characters. But was there something
Yeah.
that you wished you could have had? Like obviously, if I gave you like a Netflix budget, for example, something that was just kind of like left there.
Well, we were careful with this game of not like especially, well, I think for all games, but especially in indie and like young studios, I think the idea of scope is always difficult. So it's the idea of like managing the size of the project in relation to your budget. So we made a lot of mistakes, but I think we were careful not like bloating the game too much. So we didn't have to cut too much. Like for instance, I was talking about like the person that you do not choose as your acolyte kind of disappears.
Hmm.
That was not originally like that. There were like two or three conversations with that character. Even like for instance, if you chose Bet, you would still have conversations with Andrew throughout the game
Hmm.
that we had to cut about a year and a half ago, when we realized that we were running out of time and money. And so that forced us to abandon a subplot, and like it was mostly story related. We didn't, like, mechanically speaking, gameplay wise, we didn't really have to cut anything. I'm trying
Hmm.
to remember. It's a bit of a blur at this
It
point,
becomes a
but
blur, doesn't it?
yeah.
Completely.
But no, like it was always meant to be a fairly small game, because we knew like that the it was ambitious with the art style and the voice acting. We knew that that would be very expensive. Like I didn't have experience in video games, but I knew that spending time with actors in studios would be expensive. So we tried to keep it small and really focus
Mhm.
on what we wanted to do. So the relationship with the acolyte, the parasocial relationship with the guests, like we tried to really focus on that and like leave extra stuff that maybe wasn't as relevant to those main points that we wanted to focus on.
No, and I completely understand. You know, I was just curious because it's great for me to play the game and then kind of like get your insight about things that that could have been or you know will had to be left because of certain reasons. But obviously, I've kind of like messed around with this subject a little bit before earlier in the interview. Luc Baghadoust was a figure that was someone who caught my eye. I've known Luke for about 9 years now, or close to 9 years by the time we get to January with the Life is Strange anniversary. But my kind of revelation with this game was that I saw it through a Facebook advert, and then with Luke as well, he knows that I sleuth a lot and like kind of like take notice about things because we do podcasts. We cover Don't Nod Montreal's games, we cover Don't Nod games, and then I saw him a couple of times at Lowbirth, and I was like, "What are you doing there?" And then obviously he's credited in the credits as a mentor for you guys. I just wanted to know how you came into contact with Luke, and then also the influence of having him on the project as well, because obviously big figure in Life is Strange, you know, an architect of the first game, the second game, working closely with Michelle for the Don't Know Montreal's game at the minute. But I just wanted to know what was it like having that, because you know a couple of years ago this might not have happened because Luke would have been in France and he's now based in Canada. But I just wanted to know what his influence was on the project.
Yeah, so it all started because, well, so as you said, Luc is now working at Don't Nod Montreal, and we are also located in Montreal, and we are part of a collective of indie studios called the Indie Asylum. And one of the founders of the asylum was met Luc in at some event or something, and he's the founder of the asylum is also an investor on this bed we made, and he knew that we were very much inspired by Life is Strange, so he organized a meeting with between the co-founders of Lowbirth, me and my cousins, and Luc, and it was kind of surreal for us because it was, I think it was in 2021, so we were still like it was still early-ish in the development of the game, and we didn't even have a team. Like we were only the three co-founders for a year, and then in mid 2020 we started like being able to hire people to add to the team. So by that time we didn't have a team for more than like 6 months, I think. So we had very big like imposter syndrome. So for us it felt, and by that time the Frank Baines reference was already in the game, so it was just, it felt very surreal for us to meet with Luc, and like and since Life is Strange was such a big influence, it was very surreal for us, and but also very like I think that was one of Luc's big contributions, was to help us help us feel more like legitimate in a way, like, oh, like it's serious enough that like we can meet with this guy who's like very big, I guess, in the industry. So yeah, so basically, Luc played a an early. Well, by that point, it was a prototype of the game, and basically he gave us some feedback based on his experience with the Life is Strange franchise, and um, and then throughout the rest of the years, we would meet him at events and stuff, and I don't know, like it never like directly worked on the game, but you know, it was, that's why we credited him as a mentor. Like it was really like the initial tips that he gave us, and then just the support as well. Like he just the fact that like he was waiting for the game, and like he was excited about the game was very special for us and felt very validating, I guess, is a way I'd put it, of like, okay, like we're doing something right, because as I was saying earlier, like for the longest time we were kind of working in the dark of like no one saw the game. Like we only went to Gamescom. That was our first big event in the summer of 2022. So for like almost 3 years we were working all alone, without really getting feedback other than Luc's feedback. So that's why I think it was very precious to us.
I can only imagine, it's incredible to have that because I know when I started this channel up, I did my first series, which is called Life After Strange, with all the voice actors from Life After Strange series with Hannah Tell. Luke was one of the people who commented on the video, and obviously it had gone back like 9+ years with Luke and known him from Life is Strange 1 and 2, and it's just kind of nice to have. I've seen him pop up here and there on this channel sometimes with comments and watch the videos and stuff we've covered. So it's always been quite great to have that experience. And I imagine for you guys as well, just to have someone to have that kind of feedback and someone who can just put a bit of eyes on it and give you what you need must be incredible. And obviously, Olivier, I would be very regressed to talk about this because, Luke's been in Canada for a while. He's been with Michel Coach, the Life is Strange 1 and 2 co-director. They've been very quiet for a long time. And on my podcast with StrangeCast with a guy called Adam Mevolt that I co-host with, we talked about Don't Nod Montreal's game for about 3 years. Very quiet, no reveals, nothing else. But then obviously this month, the Game Awards, we had the reveal of Lost Records, Bloom Rage. I would be absolutely digressed if I didn't ask you for your thoughts on this game, because obviously I'm stupidly hyped for it and have done like X amount of videos already. I just wanted to know what it's like for you guys to see this, because Life is Strange was a big inspiration for you.
Yeah.
But then you have Lost Records coming out, which is from the two of the people who are, big architects on the first Life is Strange and the second Life is Strange.
Yeah, we're very excited, and like we tried so much to get some details as well. Like for the longest time, like every time we would see Luke, we were like, "So, what's happening?" But they were very secretive, but that's okay. We were very secretive as well before we revealed the game. But yeah, and I'm like we've talked a lot about like maybe our team from Lowbirth and the team from Don't Nod meeting. And like maybe discussing about our like respective challenges and all that, but I think it was maybe a bit complicated because of the secrecy. But hopefully now that the game is revealed, we can meet and get some maybe scoops or something. But yeah, it looks very like it's very impressive. Like for like the visuals and all that, and of course like we don't really know the story details yet, but like I'm really excited by the cast. The cast looks really cool. Like the four main characters, and yeah, so we'll see. But yeah, I'm really excited.
Don't worry, Olivier. I feel the same way because I've pried him for a lot of details, and it's always been it's been like hush hush. And we even did like a Theories episode, like I think maybe a year ago, something about this game. And like I remember Luke leaving us a comment, and I woke up like 5 o'clock in the morning. I was going to work, and I saw it. It's like it'd be interesting for you guys to go back and listen to some of the stuff that you said and see if you're right or wrong. And I remember mentioning in that I was talking about It Part 2. I was talking about Stand By Me, and then the vibes started going from this game, and I was like, that's crazy that it had this kind of like feeling for it. But very excited for that. But yeah, I had to ask you about that. Just out of curiosity, because as you said, we don't know the story details. We don't know. We only know the characters' names. Which of the characters do you like the most out of the four of them? Obviously, just more about the description. Which one was the one that you kind of like gravitated towards?
I don't know if I know enough about them yet. To be honest, I don't really know.
Or more so, which one like kind of stands out to you that you kind of like a bit interested in like learning more about?
But I don't like. Do they have like names associated yet? Because I know we have names and faces, but I haven't associated the names yet.
We have names and faces. They've not told us who the names of which characters are, which is the difficult part, because I've done some videos recently on the channel. I'm like, I wish you guys had just told us like which characters which. It's just I'm talking about character A, B, C, and D at this point.
Last time I saw like people on Twitter and stuff like trying to guess like who's who and all that. So, but I'm not sure yet. So it's hard to say because of that. But I don't know. Like
Okay.
they all look very interesting. Like to me, that's very interesting. And like maybe small aside, that's something that we find important as well at Lowbirth, to have like video game protagonists that are very much like different from what you get a lot of the times in video games. You know, like it's often like, well, obviously like men, but Like it's
Hmm.
also very much like the like the military type and all that. And I don't know, like I'm really happy to see a lot of diversity and like it like not only like skin color but also body type and all that. Like to me, that's very interesting. That's very it's a great thing, for the industry to just like have more diverse protagonists.
We'll come back to your pick later on when we get a name and like who's who, because we obviously we still need to figure
Yeah.
out. I've taken a good attempt at it, but I think we'll find out when we get there. But I just kind of wanted to wrap up here as well with a couple of things about this bed we made, because I'm just curious about um this was only planned as a PC release originally, and then obviously we had a bit of a shift around where the console release was announced. And I think this game was meant to come out in October as well, originally on PC.
Yeah.
I wanted to know like what kind of like how the conversations came about that you eventually got onto console releases, and then the decision to push back the PC release instead as well. Was it that you were still in development at that point and thought we are gonna make both of them the console and PC? How did that come about at Lowbirth?
So we always wanted the game to be on console. It's just it's very difficult to get approval. Like you can't just decide to be on console. You have to do a lot of talks with PlayStation and with Microsoft and all that. So when we pushed back, we had just been accepted by Microsoft Xbox, and we had already been accepted by PlayStation. But yeah, so
Mhm.
the whole thing is that like every console is different. So for every console, we have to do a different port of the game. So we were struggling to finish just the base game. The PC version
Mhm.
is was the base game for us because we developed the game on PC, so we know it runs on PC. So we were struggling to finish that one in time, and then add on top of that the PS5 version, PS4, Xbox. It was just too much. Like that's something that we'll have to like we'll know for the next project to like I guess basically if you want to release the game like I don't know in October, then you have to finish the game in June at least, so you have
Mhm.
enough time to do all the ports and all that. Which wasn't the case. Like we're still very much working on the game in August and September, trying to polish it and as much as possible, fix as many bugs as
Mhm.
possible. So we were, yeah, we just realized that like especially for us, like people weren't waiting for the game. Like a few people were. Like we have fans that follow us, have been following us for a while, and we love them. But like like pushing the game a month wouldn't kill anyone, and like we
Mhm.
really wanted the game to be in the best possible shape, the best shape possible. So yeah, that's why we pushed it just to give us some room, and then we decided to release the PS4 and Xbox version a bit later. But we always wanted to be on as many consoles as possible. We would be on Switch as well if we could, but sadly for now our game because we use Unreal Engine 5 and Lumen and very like demanding tech, the game would probably not run on Switch. But we would like it to be on Switch because like we're very proud of the game and we want as
Mhm.
many people as possible to play it. But yeah,
Maybe on the Switch too, because that was one of the questions I was going to
yes,
ask. Is like, my co-host Adam was very keen on like picking the Xbox version up, and obviously it's available now. And he was saying like, "What's it like on Switch?" I'm like, "This game is perfect for Switch." It's like I just wonder
yeah.
why it's not on Switch, but obviously there'll be limitations, which will be the Switch's running power to host
Yeah,
something like that.
it's an hardware limitation, but yes, we agree. We think it would be a good fit for the Switch as well. And yeah, I'm also hoping for maybe a more powerful Switch in the future.
Praying, hopefully it happens. So, two final questions. Um, you kind of alluded to this a little bit before. You guys are working on something next, which is very exciting. But I just wanted to know, when you made this bed we made, was there any plans to have like any sequels in mind or future installments? And then will any of your future games start sharing the same universe? Because then you can kind of like move your characters around. It seems to be what Don't Nod Montreal is doing with their game with the Lost Records universe. I'm just
Yeah.
curious, like, what are your kind of future ambitions? Because obviously, I'm eager to know that we see more of Beth in the future in some way, shape, or form. But
Yeah, I think like I'm not really interested in like doing direct sequels.
Mhm.
especially because I feel like, like in this bed, for instance, I feel like the story, the way it wraps up, like this specific story is over. But I
Mhm.
really like the approach from Don't Nod with the Life is Strange series, and I think that's something that we're gonna take inspiration from as well. The idea of like having a shared universe where characters can come back from one game to the next. So you have this bit of continuity, but at the same time, it allows you uh, to tell new stories, and you're not always like stuck. Like, oh well, this was the main character of the first game, so it has to be the main character of the second game, and oh
Mhm.
this storyline that we have to continue and all that. Because like oftentimes with sequels, I feel like there's a bit of like I don't know, like you get a bit stuck narratively because like characters have completed their arc or whatever, so you have to create like new problems or whatever that feel a bit artificial just to get the story going. So I like
Mhm.
the freedom of yeah, like you can tell a new story, but at the same time you can bring back old characters and all that. So I think that's something that we'll try to explore, but we'll see. Like we're still at the very beginning of the new project, but that's something that I find interesting.
All very interesting. And finally, to wrap up, any plans for a physical version of this game to come out in the future on like PlayStation or Xbox, or do you think there's just gonna be limitations on that?
Yeah, not at the moment. I think like for us, even like for instance, we see people on Steam on the discussion board on Steam asking as well for like specific like translations of the game and stuff. So we right now we're like staying open. We're trying to see like where the interest of people is because like for instance like people asking like oh will there be a version of the game like in Portuguese or something like it, all of that is very expensive, so we have to gauge how like much demand there is. So yeah, like the physical copies, like honestly, the fact that everything right now is online, with the online stores, is a blessing for us because without publisher managing distribution of physical copies would
Mm.
be a nightmare. So like what could potentially happen is like a very limited run, with like I know
Mhm.
some companies can help you do that. Um, but yeah, I know some people really love the physical copies, but it's a bit more complicated to handle than digital copies.
I can imagine, but hopefully, maybe what happens one day. So I think we'll wrap up here because we've spoken about a lot. I can't wait to give you the last floor here, Olivia, so you can just talk about, if there's any sales or anything, the way that people can pick it up, any way you can plug any handles as well. So I'll let you take it away from here.
Yes, all right. So right now the game is on sale on PS5 and Steam, so until like early January. And the game is also on PS4 and Xbox. I don't think it's on sale there yet, but yeah, so that's where you can find the game. As for us, you can find at Lowbirth Games on Twitter, on Instagram, on TikTok. We're pretty active on TikTok. We've had quite a few very popular TikToks there. I think one of them has like 10 million views. It's us like pressing the button on Steam on release day
Mm.
because you actually like I think a lot of people didn't realize that, but on release day you actually have to go on Steam and press a button to launch the game. So there's a video of us pressing that. But yeah, and oh, we have a Discord. I think on most of our social media in the description you can find a link to our Discord server, and I'm really active there. A lot of the other developers on the game are very active there, so you can chat with us if you have questions about the game. Questions like the ones you had today, like I really love talking with people and answering the questions if you have bugs as well. And yeah, if you play the game, it's the QR code in the menu that you were talking about earlier leads you directly to the Discord. So that's a great place to chat with the people who made the game.
Absolutely. And there you go as well. Olivia just took what I was going to say, because I was going to say, if you buy the game, you can see it in the main menu where you can see the Discord link, so you
Yes.
should do that just to buy the game. But Olivia, thank you so much for coming on. It was a pleasure speaking to you. It was a long time coming to get this on here, and I hope people who are watching this channel and people who are interested in Life is Strange go and pick this game out, because I've given it high props when I've spoken about it on StrangeCast. So do
Yes.
go and check it out, and it obviously is on sale, so there's no excuse right now to not get it. But yeah, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you are new here as well, one more time, please do consider dropping a subscribe on the channel, turn on notifications, like the video, and share with your friends. Help support the channel, help support games like Lowbirth Games' games, and also, as well, is very much appreciated from all sides as well. So do please do that. Olivia, one more time, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Obviously, great to chat with you, and
Same.
I really enjoyed this bed we made, and your future games as well. I hope they have the same success as this one, if not even bigger success as well. So we'll wrap up here. Guys, stay tuned. There'll be more content coming about Life is Strange, Lost Records. Do stay tuned. There's more stuff coming here. Until next time, see you later, guys. Bye.